Well, for one newspaper today, it's how long can Starmer go on? My question for you today is Sir Keir Starmer, what's the point? There's nothing happening. Everything he touches dissolves. Did you hear the unfortunate news? You know that when he went over to China, he raised the case of Jimmy Lai, the Hong Kong campaign. Overnight, he's got 20 years. So whatever this man touches is disastrous. And, of course, as recently as Wednesday, Morgan McSweeney, and we'll again explain to you exactly who he is in a moment, because I do think sometimes the media gets a little bit excited with itself. But now he, having said he's a vital part of his government, he's decided to go. LBC's political editor, Natasha Clark, has the full details. Natasha, good morning.
Good morning, Nick. Yes, Morgan McSweeney is out, and I think the real takeaway today is it leaves Sir Keir Starmer extremely exposed and, of course, fighting for his political career without his right-hand man. This was how the Prime Minister described his Chief of Staff just a few days ago at PMQs.
Prime Minister.
Morgan McSweeney is an essential part of my team. He helped me change the Labour Party and win an election. Of course I have confidence in him.
But yesterday he walked, or it sounds like potentially pushed, out of the vital job he has held to Sir Keir Starmer for years. Here was the Work and Pensions boss, Pat McFadden, speaking just a few hours earlier, saying he didn't think he should go.
I don't think he should. In the end, it's a Prime Ministerial, well, signed off by the King, but it's a Prime Ministerial appointment, and Prime Ministers have to take responsibility for the decisions that they make. And yes, I don't know the advice that was given, but in the end, it's a Prime Ministerial appointment, and I think the stuff about Morgan McSweeney is sort of beside the point.
And that's the question that many MPs are asking him today. Well, if he was the one that gave him this advice, why is the Prime Minister not the one that takes the flak for it? Now, Nick, Morgan McSweeney, you're right, not many of our listeners will probably know who he is. He was a seasoned political operator, vital in turning the party back to the centre and away from the left. He worked first for Tony Blair, then for Steve Reid, Liz Kendall. He also helped the party fight against the BNP in East London in the 2000s, became director of an influential Labour think tank, then went on to work for Sir Keir Starmer, orchestrated his leadership bid back in 2020, and then went on to do the party's landslide win. After Sue Gray left, which only around a year ago actually, he emerged on top. But like many aides to the Prime Minister, he has lately been the victim of briefings, blame and loads of negative stories. And last night he took responsibility for the appointment of Peter Mandelson as US Ambassador. The Prime Minister said it had been an honour to work with him and that he had played a central role in his government. And today, Nick, the question, Labour MPs have all welcomed the move, but is this going to be enough to keep him in place, and for how long? Our own Andrew Marr said yesterday that the Prime Minister, he feels, could step down quite quickly.
In life, there's always a chance. You never quite know what's round the corner, Henry, but I think it's over for Keir Starmer. I would not be surprised to see him resign quite quickly now.
You're referring to the next week or so?
Yeah. I mean, no one knows. It depends very much on his own state of mind. We read that I've not spoken to him, but we read that he's both very, very angry and depressed and so on. So he's feeling in a mercurial mood. You can never tell what somebody in that mood's going to do. But I think if he decides to dig in and carry on, it's going to be an utterly miserable experience for him. And I think he must be thinking there has to be a way out.
Now, Pat McFadden even admitted yesterday there is a world in which the Prime Minister does quit. But most of the MPs I've spoken to over the last 24 hours, Nick, say yes, he is safe for now, that this will buy him just a little bit more time. The Labour MP Natalie Fleet says he has spent his entire career fighting for victims.
I do not want him to resign, and I'll tell you why. We've just never had a Prime Minister that cares as much about violence against women and girls that he does. If he ends up resigning, it will be the most ironic thing that he has spent his entire career fighting for people like me before he'd even met me. This is a man that cares deeply.
But others say the end is inevitable and it is now time for him to go. The Tories say that he needs to own his own decisions. Here is Alex Burkhart speaking to Lewis yesterday.
I don't think that the Prime Minister's position can stand.
So you think he should resign?
I do. I think he's done something wrong. And I think he's shown that his judgment is at fault.
Now, the Prime Minister is expected to address Labour MPs tonight in Parliament. It's a bit of a make-or-break appearance for him. He'll say the last few days have been tough. He will set out what his plan is, what his values are and why he is the right person. That's according to people I've been speaking to in Downing Street. So the next 4 hours, it feels like, Nick, are going to be absolutely vital. The Prime Minister determined to fight on. Let's see how it goes.
LBC's political editor Natasha Clark reporting. Let's turn straight to Luke Sullivan, who served as political director to Keir Starmer until 2024 and is now director at Headland Consultancy and is quoted in today's Daily Telegraph Telegraph and in other papers, and quoted today's Telegraph saying that he, Sir Keir, would have loathed losing his top aide. Luke Sullivan joins me now. Why so, Luke? Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. Yes, I think as you've just excellently explained to your listeners who Morgan McSweeney is, Morgan was absolutely instrumental as the Prime Minister's most long-standing and senior political aide. And I don't think either of them would have ever wanted to have got to the position they got to yesterday. And it's a sign of the grave political peril that the Prime Minister is in, fighting for his political life this week, that was how we came to be yesterday afternoon.
Luke, can you talk us through the choreography or whatever it might be for you and your colleagues? So you send Mr McFadden out, or he is sent out in the morning, and he's a good performer, you'll accept that, and he's one of your top team, I would suggest, on the media round, and he's holding the line, no, Morgan McSweeney, he needs to say it makes no difference. And then, really, he's probably only just got out of his car and had a cup of tea 4 or 5 hours later, and the bloke's gone. I mean, where's the joined-up thinking here, Luke?
Look, I think Pat McFadden, as you say, is one of the Labour Party's best media performers. He's also one of the government's best government ministers. And in many ways, actually, for those of us obsessively following the media, I think the Sunday newspapers weren't brilliant for the government. But I think given how difficult the political situation was, there wasn't particularly any new media line in there that you would have thought immediately caused number 10 problems. I think essentially Morgan McSweeney, yes, was a very powerful advisor, but he was just that. He was a advisor selected. I think it's very difficult for media when you're not an elected public official to basically be under the form of pressure that Morgan McSweeney was under. But I think as I was asked over the weekend and throughout last week, essentially getting rid of Morgan McSweeney doesn't fundamentally change the position the Prime Minister finds himself in. And in many ways, I think, as I'd all say in your clip just before, yes, that is part of the problem, that when you get rid of staff, especially when it's around an issue or a judgment, sometimes it's one of your lines of defence is going. And, I think one of the things, and it may seem sort of peripheral to where we are, but Parliament goes into recess on Thursday for 10 days. I think up until that period, this is going to be day by day, and the Prime Minister is fighting for his political life.
So the scaffolding is built, they're just about to erect the guillotine. Is there anything he can do?
Look, there is, absolutely. And I think the Prime Minister is going to fight his way through. I don't think he is a quitter. I think he will take solace in having been in very difficult political positions before, but he has to go out and continue to fight. And I mean, I think last week, I think the Prime Minister did almost everything he humanly possibly could to try to contain this political crisis. I think in many ways this political crisis, as your news headlines have just shown, is bigger than just this question around the appointment of Peter Mandelson, however big that is. This is a crisis, I think, for all of those in public life. And yes, there's this appointment as a question. The Prime Minister tries to answer questions there. But I think one of the key things number 10 need to try and do as soon as humanly possible is to get the vetting material out. And yes, I know the Met Police don't want all of it released, but we need to try and get some of that out. There needs to be a way this government tries to move on and get on the front foot, because, at the moment it's very difficult going.
Grateful for your time. Luke Sullivan, thank you. You're director at Headland Consultancy. You serve as political director to Sir Keir Starmer until July 2024.